This is the I Read Comic Books podcast, the very best podcast for regular comic book fans. I'm your host, Mike Rapin, and joining me this week, the sound of two whispers on the wind at 2 a.m. in a damp, empty town square, the host of the Next Issue podcast, Danny.
I don't know what to say to that, but hello.
And Kara Szymborski.
I feel so ethereal. What a vision you've painted.
Everyone's a ghost tonight. I've been watching too much of True Detective Night Country, so all I can think of is just ghosts and darkness, and I'm so glad that I do not live in Alaska. But before we get into today's show, two things I want to shout out. One, we're starting a new little format thing that we're doing with the show here. We hope you like it. You're going to hear it today. And then if you have any feedback, send us an email, ircbpodcast@gmail.com. And on top of that, on Friday, that is February 16, Danny and I are going to be jumping on Twitch, and we're going to be building our Lego Batmobiles. We're calling it a Better Batmobile Build Stream. Come hang out with us. We're going to be talking comics, and I'm going to try to get my computer set up in my dining room downstairs, and I'm going to, I don't know, with lights. I have one light that I'm going to try to use, and then I'm going to build this giant Batmobile, and Danny's going to do the same. It's going to be a really fun thing. So to see who can build it first and whatever else we do that night. So come hang out with us on Friday. Danny, it's going to be a blast, right?
Mike set the bar really high because I don't know how much of the build we're going to get through, but I'm excited to get into it anyways.
I'm determined to finish mine, but
in one section, in one sitting?
I don't know. It's a big Batmobile, but go ahead, Kara.
Mike is optimistic. I'm just wondering, are you allowed to steal Paul's branding for Better Batmobile? Did he authorize this?
Well, listen, we're calling it a what is it, derivative work of the Better Batmobile series
spinoff.
Right. Better Batmobiles are Steamboat Willie. That's what I'm calling it.
It's Paul's fault because he just went ahead and did his like really quickly.
Yeah, that's
and
true.
Made us look bad about it. So
right, yeah. Paul had a really nice Batmobile build that he did already, but Danny and I are just playing catch up 2 years later. So that's gonna be fun. Come join us on Friday, February 16, 8 p.m. Eastern. It's gonna be a blast. But on twitch.tv/IRCB podcast. But let's get into things. Let's talk about comic books. We're here for two legally mandated questions. That is, how have you been? How have comic books been? Let's start with you, Kara.
Thanks, Mike. It is my birthday week. It is my birthday month. So I'm a birthday month gal. I'm just like, it's all about me. Treat myself, do all the things that I want. Budgets are for March. So living my best life. I got, as part of my birthday extravaganza, I was gifted some comic books. So I read a book that I did not choose. And I know, bold. So these comic books were a gift from someone who is not a comic book person. How do you guys feel about being gifted comic books? I feel like this is like high risk, high reward. Mike's making a face.
Danny, go ahead before I get into a rant.
So I love it because I love the intention of somebody giving me, like, I understand. I've been given books before where either I already have it, maybe I've already read it. Maybe it's something that's kind of weird and I'll never get into it.
Mm-hmm.
But just the attention to detail, like, oh, they like comics. Maybe this will try it, like. So yeah, I appreciate that part of it. So
yeah. How about you, Mike? What's your rant?
I am the exact opposite. So here's the thing. I love the idea that someone knew that I was really into comics and said, hey, I'm going to get you a comic book. But the other side of my brain says, how dare they think that I don't know about this already? So I am notoriously bad at receiving gifts in general, just because I'm a terrible person in that regard. But like getting comic books in specific, well, this is the thing. It's like getting comic books in specific. It's very like 9 times out of 10, it's something I've already gotten. And in my mind, I'm constantly on the search for someone to give me a gift that is meaningful and thoughtful and blah, blah, blah. So it's like I set all these unreasonably high expectations for people, which is extremely unfair to them. Like, this is a problem with me. It's not a problem with anybody else. And I recognize that after years and years of therapy. So I understand it. So getting comic book gifts, I've unfortunately like scarred Kelly in that she got me comics, I think once. And I was like, oh, thanks. I don't think I'm going to read this. And I don't know why I was like that. I was a dumb 20-something, and that's just what happened. Listen, we've talked about it. We've gone past.
I was gonna say, but then she married you, so it's fine.
But then she married me, so like it all worked out. But I've always been like this, especially when it comes to comic books. So I think as an adult, as a 35-year-old man, I think I'm a little bit more mature, and that if someone got me a gift, I wouldn't just frown at it like a 7-year-old when they're like, I didn't want this, mom and dad, or I'm mad that you got me clothes instead of Legos, which is also me as a 7-year-old, right? So
Mike,
as
you're
an
the
adult
worst.
now.
We should get in a gift off. Can you imagine us just being like, we both have these relentlessly high standards. Can you meet them?
Listen, I can't ruin this friendship with you like that. I don't want to do it.
Oh
But
my god.
what I'm saying is, I think now if I got a comic from somebody, and because
Yeah.
the thing is, I have like a coworker of mine gave me, he's like, oh, I had a bunch of these comics, like I had them, I found them in a box. Do you want them? And I was like, oh, cool. I brought them home, and they're just like sitting on my shelf. They're a bunch of like 90s comics. I
Mhm.
wasn't like, these are garbage. What the fuck are you doing, right? So at this point, I'm a little bit more mature, and I just kind of I smile, thank the person. Usually try to read it, especially if it's something I actually haven't heard of, but
Sure.
like who knows? But yeah, so. What I'm saying is that we're
Whew.
always growing, we're always learning.
We are always growing and learning. I have to say, I started out realizing that I was being gifted comic books where Mike was, but then I
Mhm.
landed where Danny was because I got a great explanation of why these were chosen, and I was like, yeah,
See,
okay.
but context is like super duper crucial, right? If someone just blindly hands you a gift and they don't
Yeah.
give you any reason for why they got it for you, that's especially when it comes to comics. It's like I don't understand why, but if someone gives you a reasoning, like that can validate and totally change the entire picture. So I get that.
So the book that I'm going to talk about today is one of these comics that were chosen for me. And I think of myself as a Transformers person, but I realized that in recent years I've been way more vocal about the Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles. And I also want to say that Tumblr has ruined me forever because I have to concentrate on saying their name because I want to say Tootin' Teenage Needle Teetles every time. Every time because of that one dumb Tumblr shit post from like 10 years ago. So I'm just like, my little Tootin' Needle Teetle Beetle babies.
Yeah.
Anyway, so this book that I was given is Saturday Morning Adventures Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles number 10. So
Mhm.
I'm going in cynical and skeptical. I'm like, damn, number 10 in the middle of a run. I'm not going to know what's going on. This is so obnoxious. Feeling. So this is story by Eric Burnham, art by Dan Schoening, letters by Ed. Did I write this name down right? I'm going to double check the credits. Dukeshire.
It should be Dukeshire.
Google corrected it to Duke Shirt, and I'm like, that can't be right. Colors
Yeah.
by Luis Antonio Delgado. So first of all, this book delivered on its promise because it is a Saturday morning cartoon. It's like this run is based off of or inspired by the 80s animated Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles show, Teetle Beetle Needle Teetles. And it is just like it understood the assignment. So right away, first page, April O'Neil is giving us a one-page recap of what happened in previous issues, which is great because this story arc, this issue, is number 2 of 3. It's like the middle issue of a trilogy. And I'm like, I'm not going to know what's going on. This is so unfair. I just want to like relax with some turtles. Turns out it's great because they understand that this is supposed to be a book that you can jump into and just understand. So April does her little like exposition bit through the framing device of her giving a news report. So I'm like, all right, I'm caught up. For reasons, Shredder and Leonardo have been sent back in time because Shredder has a sword that can cut through space-time, and now they're in feudal Japan. So
Love it.
So right off the bat, I'm like, yes, hell yes. And so the other 3 turtles are like trying to figure out how to get Leo home. Leo and Shredder. I just want to say, Shredder in this book, so good. Like such a good campy 80s villain. They totally nailed the tone of this show and like the style of cartoon that you're going for. Almost immediately, Shredder's like, I don't care what time we're in, I can still kill you. Ha 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 ha. And then they almost immediately run into a bunch of like feudal Japanese warlords. And Shredder has like, there's a moment of dialogue where you can see he's quick thinking, where he's just like, he has to figure out how to explain Leonardo or else this is going to be derailed really quickly. So he's like, this Kappa attacked me. And I'm like, hell yeah.
Of course.
Because a Kappa is a creature from Japanese like yokai mythology. It looks like a Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtle. And I'm like, did the creators of TMNT go this deep and like choose this iconography? I don't even care. That's genius. So
Yeah.
But like with the context clues, they didn't like explain what a Kappa was, but I thought it was really well done where it's like, okay, you're trusting your audience to either Google that because it's 2023 and we have computer phones, or
Mm-hmm.
to pick up on the context clues of being like, oh, this is an explanation that these people in this time period will accept as real. So then it's all like hijinks of Leonardo trying to figure out like what the hell is going on and why he's suddenly tied up, and Shredder finds a more powerful sword that can also get him back through space-time. And meanwhile, like I just am not up enough on TMNT lore to be able to articulate very clearly the character Renee or Renette, who's like the time traveler from the future who like pops in randomly to like tell the turtles about. All right, so she shows up and she's like, guys, I have a message for you. Wait, no, I don't. What time is it? What year is it? Have we met already? And it was so like, I just really loved that she was allowed to be a space case. I'm like, yes, this would be me as a time traveler. Be like, hold on a minute, wait. What? Where am I? Like, I'm like that normally. So
Yeah, sure.
it was delightful. So they were like, oh, this is great. Are you here to help us save Leo? And she's like, no, what are you talking about? And Raphael, my boy, my angry, grumpy boy, is just like, nailed it right away. He has like a quick thinking moment where he's like, well, if you need all four of us, then clearly it's within your job description to help us get Leo back. So it's like this whole like Deus Ex Machina thing with like getting them all back home. At the end of the issue, Shredder and Leo are both back home, and we had like a fun side romp into feudal Japan. And it was honestly like, this is how serial comics should be. Like when you see an issue number and you're not going to pick it up because you're like, I haven't been reading this, I can't jump in at issue 20. That's unfortunate. But if you are like IDW and you consider that you want your comic book to be something that anyone could pick up, you do things like exposition that's not too overburdened. And then people like me can jump in and be like, I do want to read this little Saturday morning cartoon. It is so cute. So it was just delightful. I don't necessarily think I would like read this month to month, but it's nice to know now that this is an option if I'm like, I really just want like a 10-minute turtle adventure that I don't need to think about too hard. This is it. I might like see if the library has some trades and see what's what. Because if you like turtles, check out this series. It is not intimidating, I promise.
Yeah, I think Nick had told me about this a short while back on an episode, saying that there's a whole naming convention issue of like Saturday morning something. There's like 4 or 5 of them or something. And it can be a little confusing if you're trying to find like specific issues. But to your point, I think the idea is that it's supposed to be just like the TV show where you're like, you don't have to watch it every single week. You could just pick up an issue or pick up an episode if you're watching on TV, and it'll be fine. It'll work. It's just a good turtle story. So I'm glad to hear that another person has jumped in and had the exact same experience. So that's like re-solidifying things. I appreciate that.
Yeah, cowabunga.
Yeah.
Hell yeah.
IDW's been really good at they have a few series under their Saturday morning brand. Like Dungeons and Dragons is another one I think that they put out. So yeah, they make it feel like it's, you could just jump in. It's mainly geared for a younger audience, but like anybody can kind of jump in. So
that's the best kind of all ages book though.
Yeah. Well, Danny, what about you? How have you been? How have comic books been? I know it's Super Bowl Sunday today, so are you getting hyped?
Well, Mike, it's a rainy day here in Texas. So I've been indoors most of the weekend. I mean, I haven't been following the football team. Of course, I'm going to watch it because we're all legally required to in Texas to pay attention to football every once in a while. But it's been really good. I'm very excited to watch the game because I also love to read comics while sports are on the background. So I'll probably just probably run through a few things instead of checking out the game. So, but for this week, I want to talk about. I've read like about 12 comic books in the last 48 hours, just catching up from last week, gearing up for next week. But even so, I'm not going to talk about any of those. What I want to talk about is Thundercats #1. From Dynamite Comics.
Of course.
I'm showing
Danny,
the guys the foil variant that I.
Danny, how did you not start off that sentence with Thundercats, ho?
Oh. I didn't want to give everything away right up front because But I do like that we're on this train. Like the theme of this episode so far has been like, oh, we're gonna just talk about nostalgia franchises in our comic books.
Sure.
Bring back the 80s, except don't.
Yeah. So let me talk about the creators before we get into this book. So this book is written by Declan Shalvey, with art by Drew Moss, colors by Chiara De Francia and Martina Pignodelli, with letters by Jeff Eckleberry. Let me give you a quick recap. If you don't know who the Thundercats are, the Thundercats are on the move. The Thundercats are loose. Feel the magic. Hear the roar. Thundercats are loose. That's... Oh, wait, that's the song. Sorry.
What? Hold on. I have zero context of the Thundercats other than I know that they are
Wait, really?
cat-ish people. Genuinely, I know about nothing.
Did you
about
not
the
watch this
Thundercats.
on Cartoon Network when you were a child?
No, I was straight up like, I watched Dragon Ball Z. That's about it. That, let's be real.
Whoa.
Okay. All right. Well, Mike, I grew up watching the Thundercats on Cartoon Network. And when I was in college, my prized possession was a pair of Chitara Converse sneakers.
Okay.
So,
I recognize that
Love
name.
it.
I recognize it. Danny, what's your history with Thundercats, please? Because I feel like we're all of the same-ish age. Somehow I just completely miss Thundercats.
Yeah, it's interesting to hear you've never... So what I was talking about earlier, that's the opening song.
Okay.
Obviously it doesn't go like that, but I didn't want to get a copyright strike on our audio, right? But yeah, that's the opening of the 80s cartoon.
Yeah.
I mean, I watched it as a kid. I wasn't the biggest fan. I think as a concept,
Sure.
it's pretty cool. Like the idea of these, humanoid cats with a big sword, and they're fighting, this mummy
Mum-Ra.
and mutants and stuff. It's fun, but I don't. If you ask me about mythology, I remember
No idea.
nothing.
The
Okay.
aesthetics, though, burned in my mind.
Okay.
Exactly. Same here. The eye of Thundera is like burned into my forehead. But I think that's an advantage, because going back into a comic book for a franchise, you don't want to just hear the same story or read the same story, right? Or even if some things are changed, then you don't really remember everything. So in this book, after the Thundercats have to escape their home planet of Thundera to look for a new home, they find Third Earth. But after their malfunctioning stasis pod causes a young Lionel to age physically, which is a detail I didn't remember. So Lionel, when they leave, he's the same age as the other cats, as Wild Kitty and Wildcat, or Willy Cat, but he ages physically, but he's not mature enough yet
Wait, he's
Mm.
Billy
to lead the
Batson?
Thundercats.
This is like
Kind of.
Captain
Yeah.
DC version Captain Marvel, Fawcett Comics Captain Marvel, all over again.
it-
Nothing is new. Everything is recycled. Continue.
It's a little bit like that, and I didn't remember that detail. So going back, and Declan Shelvey and the team do a really good job of just putting all this in a couple of pages. So it's not a recap comic. The comic isn't about their history. It's about what's going to happen afterwards. So after they get to the Third Earth, they are being chased by the mutants, and then an ancient evil has awoken, who we don't get a lot of details for in the comic, but I mean, it's Mum-Ra. Like, if you've ever seen the cartoon, you know that it's a Mum-Ra.
Okay.
So I'm very excited for that. I after reading this, I did go back and watch the first 2 episodes of the 80s series
Oh.
just to check out the difference.
How did it
And-
age, Danny?
Well, I think the cartoon is fine. It's definitely geared for a very young audience. There's a lot of like silliness.
Snarf. The whole character of Snarf.
Snarf. So funny enough, and this is a slight spoiler, Snarf is not in this first issue of Thundercats,
Oh.
even though he's in the cover. So
False
this
advertising.
leads me to my next point. There are some things that they are changing. Some of the mythology is changing. So I think that's going to be a really interesting ride, because I believe Declan Shelvey and Drew Moss are big fans of the franchise, but they also want to tell their own story. So I appreciate the changes because it makes it feel like something new. One thing I really loved was in the art, it really captures that motion of Lionel, like, pulling out the Sword of Omens and yelling Thundercats. Like, just those movements are kind of like burned into my brain, those images. And Drew Moss does such a good job of just capturing like the big, him swinging around his sword and putting it up and yelling ho, like all that stuff. It really captures it. So is it nostalgia? For sure, but when it's done well and there's enough changes for me to be invested, I think it's gonna be just fine. I do wish this was a little longer to get a little bit more story,
Mhm.
but I think I'm just being greedy there. So, yeah, I really enjoyed this. I'm surprised to hear that Mike has no familiarity with this franchise, so I'd
This is
be
blowing my
interested in your
mind.
take. Yeah.
I mean, if I can get a copy of it, I'll check it out. But like, it's Dynamite, which means that it's like print only, and their digital distribution is only through Amazon. And I don't know.
Ooh,
Then there's like what 475,000 variants for this issue. So I mean, I don't know. I
How
could
many
probably
did you buy, Danny?
yeah. That was my next question.
just the one.
Just the one. I'm
I
I'm proud
I
of you.
So
only
proud
bought
of you.
the one.
Yeah.
I am proud of myself too. But I feel like if I do go to a convention or something soon and I see some other ones, I might pick them up.
Hmm.
But Mike, to the distribution thing you were talking about, I agree. I think on the Discord we were chatting about like there's people that couldn't go to the shop but they wanted to read it,
Yeah,
and
and it wasn't on Amazon. It was like it wasn't
no,
anywhere.
we didn't know how to pick it up. I
Exactly.
Boo
have a
boo.
preview copy, but I didn't know how to tell them to go buy this digitally.
Yeah.
So
Hmm.
Yeah, it's kind of a bummer.
Dynamite really doing themselves a disservice with like not being accessible enough to their
Yeah,
customers.
Yeah.
especially on a big title like this, I'm really surprised this isn't like being pushed everywhere, right? Like I feel like if they're gonna
Yeah,
triple down on this nostalgia bullshit, they might as well they need to make it as available as possible to people. So I don't know, maybe that'll get
yeah.
resolved by the second issue, but yeah, it's kind of weird.
Pre-orders for this book were 170,000
Yeah,
for issue 1,
yeah,
Oh
which
wow.
is wild for like an independent, like anything outside of Marvel and DC. I don't think you get numbers even close to that.
yeah.
So
Are those numbers like are they being put in a do people still get nerd boxes? I feel like those numbers only really happen if it's like everyone's getting a
Yeah, I feel like
so
something.
Loot Crate, but
they had closed the final order cutoff and then they opened it up again because of the high demand.
Oh wow.
So
wow,
I've never heard of that in my 10 to 15 years of
Okay.
reading comic books.
Okay.
interesting.
Go Dynamite, I guess.
Yeah,
Things I thought I'd never say.
I know. Well, let me talk about a book.
Boom goes the dynamite. I
Ha.
think is the saying.
Okay. All right, stop it. Quit it,
Anyways,
both of you.
Mike, how about you?
I've been good. Went out and bought some more Pokemon cards. As I said, I was watching Night Country. I was very surprised to realize that I was caught up because I thought the entire series had come out. But season 4 of True Detective is pretty good. So if you get a chance, highly recommend it. 6 episodes. It's very scary. And I say that because the previous 3 seasons are kind of spooky, and this one is like legit scary. So I figured I would just continue down the path of reading and consuming scary things. So I decided to read World Tree Volume 1. This is from Image Comics, written by James Tynion, art by Fernando Blanco, colors by Jordi Belair, art by Aditya Bidikar. And this is one of those comics where I feel like James Tynion has pulled thoughts out of my mind and put them succinctly, like beautifully to page. And I say that with a big asterisk because this book is extremely dark, and extremely gory and extremely murderous. And like, I would not recommend this to like anybody who does not care to see brutal death and murder on page, because that is what this book is full of, like right from the get-go. So I'm going to put that out there to begin with. But I do want to just start my discussion of this with the criticism at the top, because I think Tia a long while back had read issue 1 of this and had a lot of issues with how gazy this book is, right? How male gazy it is. There's a main character, her name is Fear. She walks around mostly naked throughout the entire book. And I think it serves a purpose for the character to show that she sheds societal norms by not wearing clothes or wearing very little clothes. However, I think that a book like this can do that type of character without them being portrayed in such a way that it feels almost sexualized, right? Character can be naked on page without it feeling like I'm just like this panel was made so that I could stare at this character's boobs. And I feel like we
Mhm.
get that a lot throughout this first volume. So I definitely understand the very, very valid criticism of how the art portrays this character Fear, rather than trying to lean into the she's very crazy aspect, which is what it's supposed to be, because everybody who sees this part of this technological thing kind of at the core of the book goes a little bit out of their mind as they've been consumed by this other dimensional thing. We don't really know the answer to it yet. I don't want to spoil all the pieces that we find out in the volume. But I think you can portray that character without it just being like half page sized panels of like this woman from her like midsection upwards. You can
Mhm.
show that character's naked without doing that consistently throughout this book. So
Well, Mike,
go ahead.
once you said oh, she's naked because she is rejecting societal norms, my brain went, a dude wrote this.
No,
Like, that is just not.
here is the thing.
Like,
I'm going
no.
off of like an assumption because that's not
Sure.
explicitly stated in the book, right? The idea is this, because we see another person who's been affected by this thing in the book and they haven't done that, but she's
Oh,
doing that for reasons of, I don't know. We haven't really gotten an answer. That's just the thing that I'm assuming, because people who see this thing, they start to do all sorts of weird, non-societally accepted things. I assume that's why she's doing that. I don't think it's a strong enough reason to do that.
No, it's not.
So that criticism aside, I found this book to be interesting and extremely dark in a way that I think 21-year-old Mike would think is the coolest thing he's ever read in his entire life. And that is like an interesting or a weird thing to say, because like I vibe with this book on like oh, this is really dark and fucked up kind of level. The type of thing where if you spent your early 20s, late teens on like the bottom of the internet in the guttural, awful spaces of Chan boards and Live Leak and something awful forums, you totally understand where the core of this book is coming from. Of like, these were people who were on the internet in the quote unquote early days of like popularity, and they found this other side of the internet, this darker, unreal dimension kind of. It very much gives me like Hellraiser vibes in some very, very tiny little ways. But I understand what Tynion is trying to do with this book of taking all of these weird, gross things and saying, what if it wasn't just people doing this? There was like a thing out there. I want to say like an entity of some kind that's like kind of compelling people to do this. But I don't know.
Oh, so it's like mimetic, but different.
Yes,
this time.
but different. Yes.
Kind of like how the Wachowskis said, like, the Matrix, that worked. Let's do it again. And then we got Jupiter Ascending.
So, yeah, sort of. I wouldn't say that it's that kind of jump from Matrix to Jupiter Ascending, but I understand like where Tynion is coming from with this idea of like, the people who showed me the darkest, grossest shit on the internet, they are the inspiration for this book. And I understand that, because at the time I was very much that type of person who was looking for the darkest, grossest shit on the internet to like freak out with my friends, right? And I stopped doing that probably in the early 2010s because I got very paranoid of like, I don't know who can ever see my browsing history. Let's just never look at that stuff, to absolve myself from any claims of Mike's looking at really weird shit on the internet. So I don't know. I think Tynion has continued to do what he's done in a lot of his more recent books in this series, which is derive a lot of really interesting characters with like very solid relationships in this book, because there's a web of people that are kind of coming together to tell this story. And every single person feels very real, and also feels like a vessel in which Tynion can like channel some of his own feelings and anxieties through. Like, each individual person feels fully relieved, and they all touch on different things that I can weirdly relate to, of like feelings of uncertainty among friendships, feelings of uncertainties of like the authority around you, feelings of like, there's one character in particular that I thought was very well described, of like, she's older, she's had 4 kids, and she's just longing for a relationship where she can be close to someone, and not like in a sexual way, but like in a, can we lay on a bed together and just kind of be close to each other without there being anything more than that. Like, I like really like the way that he like described that entire scene, and had this character talking to another character about it. Like, and I feel like this book is full of characters like that, who have these wants and needs that Tynion is trying to describe without. And it all comes together in a way that doesn't feel forced. Like, all of these moments feel supernatural. So the fact that this book is based around this really dark, gross thing, and yet you get these extremely like touching, real moments between people is very interesting to me. I really liked it. I don't know. I think I don't know if I could have read this book month to month, but reading it as a collected edition, it's like 136 pages. You fly through it very fast. And honestly, you can skip past the grosser stuff and it doesn't change the story. So if you were interested in it, that'd be my recommendation to it. But ultimately, I wouldn't recommend this to you if you are not a fan of like gore and horror, and I say this of like violence against people of all ages and types. And it is absurd, the things that are drawn into this book. So if you're not a fan of that, don't even pick this book up. Don't even consider it. But if you're numb to it, like someone like me, go ahead and read this book, because it's interesting. So I don't know. That's my review of it, I guess.
I love, like, while you're describing your part of the internet and your background with the internet, and why this book like did have some appeal for you in that regard. Mm-hmm. Like Danny said, keeping with our theme of nostalgia, although that's a more a different type of nostalgia.
Yeah.
I was just thinking, like, while you were like canvassing the darkest reaches of the internet, like around that time, my internet shit was like Potter Puppet Pals and they're taking the hobbits to
Well,
Isengard. God.
Here's the thing. I was also like in that stuff too, but then my friends would be like, "Hey, it's 2 a.m. We're gonna jump on 4chan and see what they're talking about tonight." And it's like, I guess that's what we're doing now. After we finished all the latest videos on E-Bomb's World and Newgrounds, we're like, "What else can we do tonight?" You know.
Oh my god.
So yeah.
I'm like flashing back real hard to college. I was in a geography seminar where I sat in the back of the room with this nerd boy and we just passed notes the whole time, and he would just like update me on 4chan but tell me not to go on it ever. So like you say 4chan and I'm just like,
Your 4chan
thanks, Kirk,
proxy.
you protected me.
Listen, here's the thing. These weird niche, I mean, this still happens today. Like it's no longer like Chan board so much as it's like weird Discord servers where like all sorts of stuff and drama is going down. And it's nice to have like a proxy vessel of like a person who's like, yeah, I'm on here just kind of following it. Let me give you the summation of like all the weird shit that's happened over the last 3 weeks. You know, I love that. Now with these Chan boards and other things of that nature, it's usually a bit grosser in origin versus like, you know, I'm part of a, this is a total tangent, but I'm part of like there's a chiptunes little circuit board thing that you can buy, and the person who develops it and also writes music on it is like the head of this thing. And at one point there was this huge drama about a firmware drop or update that happened which disabled this specific tone of sound that used to be available. People were losing their minds, and so many people were upset, not over the fact that they couldn't use this sound anymore because a lot of people weren't using it and that's why this guy removed it, but the fact that this person was like, well, I'm just going to remove it, and like didn't give anybody a vote even though this person is the developer and all this other stuff. There was like a whole screaming board about it. And it's like, okay, that's great.
Exactly my level of internet petty drama. I want something that is low stakes, high intensity, super niche. I want someone to explain it. That's the kind I've got a friend who's on a bunch of Discord servers like that, and they come back to me and they're like, I have to tell someone this drama. I'm like, great, tell me.
Exactly. I mean, niche tea is like maybe the best type of tea, right? Especially if you're not involved in it, just to be an outsider kind of looking in on this little snow globe of a world. It's amazing. There's an entire TikTok account dedicated to this, and I think the woman who runs it is very fun. The way she says, I was just hearing about all, you know, she goes into summation of like some very, very obscure things like knitters who are big fans of the NFL and make very specific like wool and sewing and what are the cross stitching for NFL. But there was like a whole drama about like what was okay and not okay to make, like in regards to the Chiefs, like because of course, right? People are like, well, this is the brand, so I can use the brand, and people are like, that's problematic. Don't do this. So, you know, the whole thing. They're out there, and it's really fun. But before we go any further, we'll save this for the post credits. Let's talk about books that.
I was just,
go ahead, Danny.
Sorry,
go ahead.
Mike. I was just gonna mention because I didn't want to interrupt, but I have read some World Tree.
Oh yeah.
The one thing I will mention to you on top of that to close out that discussion and guide us back to comics. I think Fernando Blanco does such a good job at the flashbacks and changing his art style from that dark and gritty.
Yeah.
Because the book almost feels like, if you've ever seen the show *Halt and Catch Fire* about like computers from the, like it feels a lot like that.
Yes.
And I was very excited for the book for that. So I read the first issue. I was waiting for the trade. So now that you've given me a little bit more light on it, I think I'm going to check it out.
Okay.
Just to see, because I was never also like a dark web, like, no, thank you.
Okay.
I mean,
so
I might just skim over those pages, but
yeah.
Thanks for reminding me about *Halt and Catch Fire* though, because I haven't seen it, and you said that, and my brain went, Lee Pace.
Yeah,
Lee Pace is 6'5" or 6'4", whatever this fruit is.
And Christopher Canwell, the creator of the show, he does comics. He's doing comics now. So
yeah,
nice synergy. You brought it back to comics.
Nick convinced me a long time ago to jump in on *Halt and Catch Fire*, and it's so good, so good. I feel like I need to go back and rewatch it. It's so good.
It takes place in Dallas too, because that's where the company.
Well, Danny, when I come visit you in Dallas one day in the future, you're gonna have to give me a tour around Dallas where they shot
*Halt and Catch Fire* of fictional locations. Sure, we'll find it.
But yeah, let's keep talking about comic books. Let's talk about comics that are on the top of our pile, whether they're new, they're old, or just something you're trying to get off your shelf, or in my case, it just randomly showed up on your door because you forgot that you pre-ordered it 4 or 5 months ago. These are the books at the top of our pile. I'm going to shout out some of our folks that are hanging out with us on Discord today, what they're reading next. Hugh is going to be reading Fall of the House of X #2. I can't wait to get back into X-Men once the Marvel Unlimited finally gets caught up with the delay. CK is going to be reading 4 Color Heroes. Nick is reading Arbonne's Dust #3, which I believe is under hot contention against Petrol Held #5 or 4, which comes out this week, one of those two. And Paul G is going to be reading Long Distance Pan-African Comics Anthology. Great picks by everybody. But let's bounce over to Danny. What's on the top of your pile this week?
Well, Mike, as you mentioned, there's a lot of good stuff coming out this week. There's a lot of ongoings that I'm reading, like Petrolhead, Kill Your Darlings, Christopher Chaos, and Our Bones Stuff. Like, I'm reading all that stuff. But as I was looking for it, I knew Nick was going to be our proof listener for this episode.
Sure.
So my pick for this week is If You Find This, I'm Already Dead, #1. This is a book from Dark Horse Comics, written by Matt Kint, who is a podcast favorite. If you remember, he's done things like Berserker, Mind Management, Grass Kings. We have art by Dan McDade, who's working currently on the DC comic series Neo Before Zod, which is a whole other bag that I don't want to get into.
Okay.
We don't have the time, Danny.
Yeah.
We do not. Colors by Bill Crabtree, letters by Jim Campbell. One of the cool things is when I saw the preview for this is actually presented in that 8x10 and 10 and 2/3 or whatever magazine format. So like we got a lot of room for some really cool art. Like I've really been enjoying books in that format because I can see that the artists are starting to take like really good advantage of that.
But they don't fit your bags and boards, Danny. What the hell? Like, you have to buy special bags and boards for these.
It's okay, because if I buy enough, I'll use up my 100 bag and board magazine bag. So, yeah, in the long run, it'll all pay for itself.
Listen, don't tell Distillery that.
Wow.
Don't tell Distillery that.
It won't.
I am mad enough about bags and boards, like, to begin with. Like, I started going to a local shop for Transformers, and they were like, do you want this bagged and boarded? I was like, damn it, I do, but I don't, but I do.
I'm sitting over here with some giant Distillery books that I haven't got bags yet for.
All right.
So this book will follow Robin, who's a reporter from a big city publication that has been embedded with this Marine group that is on a mission to a hostile pocket universe called Terminus. I read that sentence and I was like, what is this, Solo Leveling? What's going on? If you haven't catched Solo Leveling, you should either read the manga or watch the anime.
Okay.
But 10 minutes into this adventure, the squad ends up dead and Robin is the only one there. And she has to both survive and she also has to report the story. Terminus is supposed to be full of like these cosmic wonders and sci-fi gods who are constantly in a power struggle. So we're gonna follow Robin to see if she can get back home and have the story told. Matt Kinn mentioned in an interview as I was looking for some preview stuff that he wants to recapture the feel of like magazines like Heavy Metal or Epic magazine in this comic book. So this is very exciting because this is only a 1 of 3. So it's like low commitment, easy barrier of entry. And like I said, I picked this because I know Nick is a big fan of Matt Kint. And he was going to be listening to this. So if he didn't have it on his pull list, I hope that it's on his pull list now.
Well,
I'm very excited for this one.
I think Nick is very upset about this book, like he's been about the last Matt Kint series that I think he did over at Dark Horse about how it's $8 for 32 pages worth of comic book.
This one's also $8 for like 36
and it's probably
pages. But they're big pages.
I was gonna say they're big pages. They're probably printed on the hard card stock. They've got good paper quality. Like I know that's what they're doing to up the price here, but also $24 for what 70 or 96 pages at the end of the day. I don't know. Is that worth it? Is it going to be better to just collect this as a trade? I don't know. Like it's a whole other discussion.
Will the trade also be a weird size?
Oh,
will you even be able to fit it on your bookcase?
Are.
Yeah, definitely.
Yeah,
I mean, it'll fit on a bookcase fine, right? But it's just going to be wider, right? Like the pages are wider. So
right.
I don't know. But it sounds cool, Danny. I'm very mad at how cool this sounds. That's the thing that's killing me right now.
Me too. I was very upset because I was like, I don't need to read anything new already. I'm already reading so much.
And yet here we are.
Yeah.
Mike, what's top of your pile?
Well, for me this week, I am going to be reading a book that showed up on my doorstep out of the blue. I put this as my top of my pile on the Patreon. If you're not following our Patreon, you can get access to the top of our pile posts. Even as a free member, you can see those a week later after we post them to see what everyone in the show is reading next, whether they're on the podcast or not. But I put this as the top of my pile because I thought I was going to read it on Friday night, ended up not. And yeah, the reason why I never got around to it is because I started rereading Naruto. That's what's happening in my life right now. I'm really, really sorry to everyone in advance because I'm about to become a Naruto person. But yeah, the book of
You're gonna start running, Mike, like all the kids.
you're
Naruto running like all
you're
the
acting
kids.
like I haven't been running like that for years now. But no, Fall Through by Nate Powell. From the publisher, they said, at first glance, Diamond Mine seems to have emerged in 1979 as Arkansas's first punk band. Instead, this quartet is revealed to be an interdimensional group of travelers from 1994, guided largely against their will by vocalist Diana's powerful spell embedded into their song Fall Through. As Diamond Mine tours the country, each performance of the song triggers a fracturing of space-time perceptible by the band members as they're transported to alternate worlds in which they've never existed, but their band's legend has. That is until Jody, the band's bassist and the story's protagonist, finds herself disrupting Diana's sorcery even at the cost of her own beloved work and legacy. While some band members perpetually seek the free space offered by the underground punk scene to escape from their mundane or traumatic lives, others work toward it as a means of expression, connection, and growth, even if that means eventually outgrowing Sisyphean patterns and inevitably outgrowing their beloved band family altogether. This book sounds wild. Nate Powell is a fantastic comic book creator, so I'm really excited to see what this even is. I don't know. The book itself is not huge. I wish I had it from my shelf, but it's not a huge book, so I'm really excited to see how Nate Powell not only tells us what the hell's going on in this book, because time-traveling punk band from the 90s in the 70s sounds like a really cool concept to begin with, but I'm really excited to see where Nate takes the story, how these characters all developed. It sounds like there's going to be a lot of tumultuous business, which of course I think if you're constantly time traveling with a band, constantly back and forth, could be a little frustrating. But yeah, I'm pumped to read this, and I'm very excited that the copy of the hardcover that I got, because I pre-ordered it, came with a nice little sketch on the inside. So there's this very beautiful little sketch on the inside of the cover, so that's really cool. But yeah, this is going to be fun time travel shenanigans that will probably end up breaking my heart. My guess says that this sounds like a fun romp, but it's going to probably be devastating because found family breaking up stuff is, like, for some reason, extremely devastating for me. So really excited to read this one.
Two thoughts.
Yeah.
Two thoughts. One, my brain is snagged on the use of Sisyphean patterns in the solicit because I used the word Sisyphean the other day and I felt like such a nerd. I was like, this is such a good word. Let's use it more. The futile repetition of a daily task. But love that. And I think this is going to break my heart comment. You just sounded like my mom. My mom is so mad at all of the marketing for books and movies where they're like heartwarming. She's like, every time I see the word heartwarming, I know I'm going to be depressed and I don't want to watch it.
See, here's the thing. I feel like I was just talking to somebody about, like, I love reading books and watching movies that, like, destroy me because, like, they offer really focused ways to get out emotions that I feel like are very hard to, like, pinpoint throughout day-to-day life. Like I was just had some friends over to watch we watched a movie the other night and we were talking about a bunch of other things. They're like, oh yeah, don't watch this unless you want to cry a lot. And I was like, what's the name of that movie again? I really want to watch this. Like, because I love that kind of stuff. I don't know. And I feel like this is going to be that same kind of feeling, but
okay.
I agree, Mike. I think watching stuff or reading emotional stuff like that helps you, like, get out maybe some of your own stuff. Like, I remember at the end of the Iron Claw, I was like, I felt sad, but I was also, like, really, like, it felt nice to just kind of let go of a lot of things at the same time. Like, so I'm actually putting this on my list of things to read because this sounds both fun and then also like it's gonna destroy part of my problems. So
yeah,
I hope that you both have an emotional catharsis through consuming this piece of media.
It's the only way to feel things these days in the year 2024. But speaking of really cool, fun ways to feel things, Kara, tell us about what's on the top of your pile, please.
fun ways to feel things. God, what I'm like, are mentally still in, like, what was the last thing that made me cry? And the last thing that made me ugly cry was the series finale of Riverdale. I was sobbing for 45 straight minutes and I was so mad because I was like, it's Riverdale. What are you doing to me? But you know what? Well played, Riverdale. Well played. I ugly cried for like an hour. It's a wreck after that. Anyway.
Bless CW.
So plot. So pivot to delightful things. So, you know, first of all, the greatest Valentine that I could possibly ask for is the next Transformers issue coming out this week on Valentine's Day. I'm like, yes, Image. Well done. So that will be my Valentine to myself.
Mhm.
But so top of my pile is actually a book that I bought myself for Christmas and haven't read yet, because you never read the things that you buy. That's a later problem.
Yeah, exactly.
So one of the books that I bought myself for Christmas is the Superman Meshi manga by Satoshi Miyagawa and Kai Kitago, and it is Superman trying Japanese foods, just like flying around Japan trying different Japanese foods. I cannot think of a more delightful concept. I can't believe there's 2 of them. I bought the first 2 volumes. I never like flip ahead in books because I don't like to be spoiled, but I flipped ahead in this one, and he teams up with Batman to try snacks, and I have never wanted to read something more in my life. You know how I feel about the Superman Batman dynamic. I don't care if you think they're a bromance or frenemies or secretly in love. They're perfect together. They're perfect together, and I want to read them trying Japanese street food. So this is going to be the top of my pile because it's my birthday week, and I wish to be delighted.
That sounds fantastic. I saw this in the comic shop when I was there on Saturday, and I almost grabbed it because it just looked fun.
Sure.
I think I'm gonna have to get this from the library. This sounds
You're gonna
awesome.
have to get it.
Mike, I have good news for you. You can read the chapters on DC Infinite. That's the original format that the DC is releasing their manga.
Yes.
Okay.
And now they're printing it out. And all their manga has really been delightful. This is the one I haven't actually checked out.
I'm just gonna reach behind me on my bookcase to show you the other one that I got.
Oh, the Joker baby manga.
For reasons, the Batman is now a baby and the Joker must take care of it. Yes, this is fan fiction. Sign me the fuck up.
And the other one's Batman as a mech, so like you can't really mess it up. Like or a Super Sentai more. So yeah, you can't mess it up. All the DC manga's been on point.
That's
love it.
Okay, well, thank you for rounding this episode out with something that is absolutely delightful. Kara, I'm convinced.
Here to help.
Between chapters of Naruto, I think I'm going to have to check out this Superman Meshi. I really love this idea because I didn't know what it was about, and now I can't believe that I didn't, because I know that Dungeon Meshi is delicious in Dungeon. This has got to be Superman Meshi, so delicious Superman. Maybe that's what that translates to directly. But
gross, but sure,
yeah.
Let's go with that.
Mike,
go ahead, Danny.
Every time Naruto goes to the ramen shop, you take a pause and go read a Superman chapter.
I like that.
Boom.
I'm already like 4 visits behind, so that's great. Well, anyways, I guess that's it. That's for the show. The whole episode's done. So I hope you had a good time listening. New format of just kind of quickening things up and allowing us to chat a little bit. But that's pretty much it. So until next time, comics are good, and so are you.